Hello, everybody. My name is Naren Aryal. I'm CEO of Mascot Books and Amplify Publishing, and we also publish books under Real Clear Publishing as well. Delighted to be here this afternoon with Oriana Leckert, who's the Director of Publishing at Kickstarter. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. So thank you for being here.
And I've also got here Dana Rubin. Dana is working on a crowdfunding project right now with a book that is being published by Real Clear Publishing called Speaking While Female. And we thought it would be fantastic to have Dana's perspective here as a new author who is just about ready to embark on the crowdfunding journey. And so, Dana, you want to start off by telling us a little bit about your project?
Thank you, Naren. I'm happy to be here too and share what I know. I'm just learning, so I'm in a learning mode, but there's a lot of different pieces to a Kickstarter campaign. I'm not exactly sure what day we're going to launch the campaign, but the biggest piece is the video. The video is the single most important piece, and so that's the part that I'm working on now. Getting a really great video, getting it shot, getting all the components together during the time of a pandemic. That's my main game right now, is making the best video that I can.
Fantastic. And so the title of your project is Speaking While Female. We would love to hear a little bit more about your project and how it came to be.
Right, the book will be called Speaking While Female, 50 Extraordinary Speeches by American Women. And it is what it says. It's a collection of an anthology of 50 speeches, remarkable speeches by American women from the pre-revolutionary period or the revolutionary period to the present. And there will be some familiar names there. There will be Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony and Sojourner Truth and Helen Keller, but there's always also going to be a lot of speeches by women that you've never heard of, women who are not typically in the speech anthologies. They're not in the history books because they've been overlooked and ignored and forgotten about. So the project of the book is to change that and make us all aware of the true history of women's speech in America.
Excellent. Thank you. So again, our interest in this topic, the webinar topic, is, we're a publishing house, and we've over the years worked on several projects that have been both successfully and unsuccessfully funded. And I find it fascinating to really look at a project and understand why one is successful that you think may not be successful on the front end, yet another one is successful where it may seem like rhyme and reason, but we know that there's a formula for success, and Oriana knows this formula far better than I do. And so with that, I want to throw it to Oriana and have her share what she knows about publishing at the intersection of publishing and crowdfunding via her work at Kickstarter. Oriana, the floor is yours.
Hooray. Naren, thank you so much for having me. Donna, that was lovely. I am really excited to work with you on your project. Yeah, I have a little slideshow, so I'll tell you guys all about Kickstarter Publishing, who I am, what I'm even doing here. So let me share my screen. Share. And then I'm gonna play this slideshow. Can someone give me a thumbs up that you can see this? Marvelous.
Perfect.
Great. Okay, so yeah, thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk to you all about all the ways that Kickstarter publishing can work for writers. I'm Oriana, Kickstarter's Director of Publishing and Comics Outreach. My job is to help writers and other literary creators understand how to use our platform to achieve their creative dreams. I'm going to talk for about a half an hour. I'll start by talking broadly about what Kickstarter is and does, as well as the impacts we've seen from COVID, and then I'll break down the main elements of a campaign. Then I'll share a handful of publishing projects that show how writers have used our platform to take control of their publishing careers, make money from their creative practice, and connect with the readers who love their work. For those who are less familiar, Kickstarter is an online crowdfunding platform where creators make something to share with others and backers pledge money to support those projects. Kickstarter is only for creative work. You can't use it to crowdfund things like medical bills, charitable donations, or investment funding. Our entire mission is to help bring creative projects to life. That mission is extremely important to us, which is why Kickstarter became a public benefit corporation in 2015. This means we're a mission-driven company that considers our impact on the world as well as our profitability when making any decisions. We've also committed to paying our fair share of taxes, working to reduce our environmental impact, and contributing 5% of our after-tax profits to arts education and organizations fighting inequality. Since the company launched in 2009, more than $5.5 billion have been pledged to campaigns, and 196,000 projects have been brought to life by more than 19 million backers. During that time, in publishing, more than 53,000 projects have launched, bringing in more than $210 million. So we're a public benefit corporation and we focus exclusively on creative projects. The other main thing that sets Kickstarter apart from other crowdfunding platforms is our all or nothing model. If a Kickstarter campaign doesn't reach its goal, the creator doesn't receive any of the funds. I know that can seem scary, but it's central to how we work. We want to encourage creators to have a clear sense of how much money they need to complete their project before they embark on it, so no one is trying to bring a new idea to life with an incomplete budget. If you need $7,000 to produce a book and you only raise $3,000, you either need to come up with an extra $4,000 or make a worse book than you promised your backers. Both of those are bad outcomes. In addition, the tangible urgency of the all or nothing structure is extremely helpful for messaging and promoting a campaign, and it often helps to propel projects right past their funding goals. Here's one of my favorite statistics about Kickstarter. If you look at all the campaigns in all the categories over the last 11 years, you'll find that these projects have about a 40% success rate, which is pretty low. But if you narrow that down to only projects that have at least 25 backers, the success rate jumps to almost 80%. This shows that if you've conceived your campaign carefully and you run it well, if you're promoting to an audience just slightly larger than your mom, your next door neighbor, and the rest of your inner circle, your chances of success are extremely high. Incredibly, even during this cursed time, this still holds true. This is a chart from our internal analytics software showing successful projects year over year since 2016. The black bars represent 2020. During the early part of the year, there was a dramatic drop in launched projects, but then through the summer and into the fall, things rebounded dramatically. What's even cooler is that the success rate for projects absolutely soared during the second half of last year. To our astonishment, several Kickstarter categories, including games, comics, and publishing, wound up having their highest earning year ever by a lot. Publishing projects brought in $10 million more in 2020 than they did in 2019. So despite everything, it's a pretty good time to be launching a publishing project on Kickstarter. I'm going to go through the main elements of designing and running a campaign, but first I want to emphasize this idea. Every Kickstarter campaign is a story. These campaigns are designed to explain who you are, what you're making, and why this project matters, not just to you, but to everyone you're asking to become part of it. A Kickstarter campaign should feel like an invitation to a creative journey. You're asking your supporters to join you as you bring your project into the world. These are the elements that go into conceiving and running a Kickstarter campaign. Setting your funding goal, telling your story, creating good imagery and a fun video, coming up with compelling rewards, making a strong promotional plan, and writing consistent backer updates. I'll go through these one by one. The goal is the amount of money you're setting out to raise within the time you've allotted for your project. Kickstarter projects typically run for about 30 days, but they can be anywhere from 1 to 60 days. While the campaign is live, backers pledge to your project in exchange for the promise of a reward, such as a copy of the book. If you hit your goal, your backers' money is collected and you get to make the book. You'll want to arrive at your funding goal from two directions: what you need and what you can get. In order to determine what you need, get production estimates, price out not just the book you'll be making, but any other physical rewards you're going to produce for the campaign, as well as shipping costs for everything. You'll also need to factor in fees. Kickstarter takes 5% of successful projects, and Stripe, our payment processor, takes between 3 and 4%. It's also wise to build in a buffer in case of emergencies. Once you have a total amount, divide the number of dollars you need by 25, which is the average pledge level on Kickstarter. If the backer number that you get seems attainable based on your friends, fans, and community, then go forward with confidence. But if it seems way too high, you might want to scale down the project, fund only part of it, or wait to launch until you've done some more work to build your audience. The first part of a campaign most people will see is a project video. This is the invitation into your story. There's no requirement for campaigns to have a video, but there's definitely a preference. Even if all of your work is the written word, there are plenty of ways to make a lovely visual teaser for it. A great Kickstarter video is short, personal, and shareable. These don't have to be Hollywood masterpieces with huge production budgets. A video shot on a laptop or a phone can work really well as long as the lighting and sound quality are good. And don't forget to consider what's in the background. Next is your story. This is your chance to describe your project thoroughly in all of its nuance and depth. Use this space to talk about who you are, what your project is about, and why backers should be excited to join you on this creative journey. Don't forget to make this a visually appealing page. You can include images, links, graphics, GIFs, and dynamic formatting to keep people reading. This is a space to create context around your work and make a connection with your potential readers. It's a space to talk about what the book or project is, but also who you are as a writer. Talk about what you've written before, your publication history, and anything else you've done that will help make your readers excited for this project. It's also really key to talk about how far along you are. Have you finished the novel and need money for editing and typesetting? Are the files ready to go to the printer and you're raising funds for production costs? The more information you share about your process and your plans, the more confident backers will be that you'll be able to accomplish what you've set out to do. Now let's talk about rewards. These are objects, experiences, or mementos offered in exchange for someone's support of your project. To my mind, rewards are central to the Kickstarter proposition. They're what makes this kind of fundraising uniquely compelling because they give you a way to share your work directly with your backers. Most backers want a copy of the thing you're making, a book or ebook, but you can also get creative with other kinds of rewards. This is not an exhortation to produce a lot of swag. Running a Kickstarter does not mean turning yourself into a merch production facility, churning out t-shirts, tote bags, and mugs with your book's title. Not only are these things onerous to produce and ship, they're not even a good way to connect with your community. Instead, try to come up with less predictable things that will delight your supporters and bring them into the world of your creative process. This can mean behind the scenes or early access to your work, thanking backers in the acknowledgements, sharing a custom playlist of the songs you listen to while writing, naming a character in your book after them, and much more. Once you've got your campaign designed, it's time to spread the word. A well-designed promotional plan is one of the most critical predictors of crowdfunding success. It is, after all, how you reach your crowd. The highest conversion rate for backers comes from individual emails, so the first step is to write to everyone you know who will be excited about what you're doing. Depending on the nature and size of your audience, this can also include newsletters, so designing MailChimp or Substack campaigns in advance will help keep you sane while your campaign is live. In the lead up to your project, it's a great idea to add an email capture to your website so you can start building a direct line to the people who support your work. Social media will definitely play a major role in any promotional strategy. Use the platform where you're strongest to share campaign milestones, spotlight rewards, and more. You're going to be shouting about your campaign from the rooftops for several weeks. So before you launch, think about how you'll keep things interesting day after day. Your own audience, no matter how well developed, is ultimately finite. So think about ways to reach beyond it. Do you know other writers in your genre with large followings? Have you got friends with podcasts about literature? How about someone who hosts a writing group that invites guest speakers? Can you send out a press release that identifies an interesting angle about what you're doing that might compel a reporter to write about it? Anything you can do to get your work in front of audiences that are adjacent to your own will help spread the word farther and farther. One last important promotional avenue is backer updates. These are missives you send during the course of the campaign to the people who have already supported you. It's a crucial way to keep your audience engaged during the campaign and beyond. While your campaign is live, keep backers in the loop about your funding progress, share milestones and mentions, and encourage them to help you spread the word. Once your project has been funded, use these updates to let your supporters know about your creative process and production timeline. Share behind-the-scenes glimpses of how the work is going, updates about rewards, and news about shipping and fulfillment. Now I'll share some specific campaigns that demonstrate different ways writers have chosen to use Kickstarter. In addition to raising funds, running a Kickstarter campaign can have lots of secondary benefits. It's a great way to help you build a fan base, connect with your readers, run a pre-order campaign, sell books from your backlist, create special things for your biggest supporters, or try a new experiment, whether that's with a new form, format, or length, with a new genre, with an event or tour, or more. More than 2 million readers have backed at least one publishing project on Kickstarter, and nearly 400,000 have backed 2 or more, and they come from all over the country and all over the world. This slide features our community tab from a Copper Canyon project, which shows where the backers for that project live. Novelist Sam Hayes tried to get his story about a man whose emotions control the weather published through traditional channels, but after 58 rejections, 7 years, and 7 rewrites, he came to Kickstarter to find the readers he knew his work would resonate with. Almost 600 people pledged to get a copy, and he was able to publish exactly the novel he wanted to make. Unlike other methods of publishing and bookselling, Kickstarter lets you hear directly from your fans and build a relationship with them. Here are just a few of the more than 400 comments left on Michael Sullivan's Death of Delgath project. Writer and comics artist Zachary Weinersmith let fans pre-order signed copies of his traditionally published book, Soonish, along with a limited edition mini book. This was extremely successful. More than 8,000 people backed his project to pre-order his new work. Kronecker Wallace produced a beautifully designed new edition of Isaac Newton's groundbreaking mathematical work, Principia, after a successful Kickstarter project in 2016, which was supported by more than 1,000 backers. After producing the book, Kronecker Wallace sold through their entire print run, then returned to Kickstarter to raise funds for a high-quality reprint in 2019. The second project saw another 500 backers pledge 38,000 euros, which funded the new run. You can also use Kickstarter to sell books from your backlist to readers who are just discovering your work or folks who want a complete set. Russell Nohelty has run 7 campaigns for each book in his God's Verse series, and each one offers all the previous books as rewards, individually and in sets. Kate Milford wanted to explore different aspects of her traditionally published fantasy universe and publish books more often than once a year, which was what her traditional publishing house was comfortable with. So she created novellas set in the same world as the Broken Lands and came to Kickstarter to produce beautiful limited print editions. You can also use Kickstarter to create something special and unique for your fans. Fantasy author Patrick Rothfuss partnered with Cheap Ass Games to create Tack, an imaginary board game featured in his best-selling King Killer Chronicles series. This was hugely exciting to his audience, and more than 12,000 people backed the project to play this imaginary game made real. But you don't have to create something so huge. You can make something small, like a patch, poster, enamel pin, or anything else that brings your fans into your creative world. Comics artist Cal McDonald made a book called Can I Pet Your Werewolf? With the support of almost 1,300 backers, and later she returned to Kickstarter to create werewolf expert pins for her biggest fans. She raised more than $3,000 for more than 100 fans, more than enough for a run of high-quality pins, shipping, and some money to pay herself besides. Running a Kickstarter project can help get attention for a book months or even years before its publication date, and savvy writers and publishers can earn press coverage while their campaigns are live. Kickstarter is also a great way to jumpstart word of mouth for a new book, especially if you send the reward copies out to your biggest fans before your book is officially on sale. You can also use Kickstarter for market research. Our site provides tools and metrics that help you get a sense of where your backers come from, both out in the world and on the internet. This is a look at our creator dashboard, which breaks down all the different sites and platforms that send people to your project page. You can also use Google Analytics or make custom referral tags to get an even more detailed view. Monetize is kind of a gross word to a lot of authors, but it's totally reasonable to want to get paid for your work. Kickstarter backers understand that writers need to be paid, as do copy editors, cover designers, and everyone else who works on your book. The fees for running a Kickstarter are less than 10%, so the vast majority of the money you raise is yours to keep or to use to pay your team or cover production costs. Once you've run a Kickstarter project, you can stay in touch with your backers forever. That means you can let them know when your book is on its way to them, but also when the next book in the series is being published, or when you're visiting their town, or when you launch your next Kickstarter campaign. Your backers have demonstrated that they really care about the work you do, so let them show you. When my boss, Margot Atwell, published her book Derby Life through a Kickstarter campaign, she let her backers know when she'd be at roller derby events, and many of them came to find her, thanking her for letting them be involved in her creative journey. That kind of engagement is pretty unique in the publishing world. There are so many ways that writers and publishers can use Kickstarter. The examples I've shared are only a few of them. It's truly a flexible platform designed to help creators connect with the people who will truly enjoy their work and to support it financially. If you'd like to browse a smorgasbord of great Kickstarter publishing projects, they're all at kickstarter.com/publishing. And if you'd like to explore a bevy of tips, tricks, and resources specific to literary creators, head to kickstarter.com/creators/publishing. That's what I've got. I'm excited to answer any questions you got. And you can also find me online on Twitter or Instagram at Oriana BKLYN. Thank you for listening.
Oriana, that was amazing. Thank you.
Should I unshare my screen? I will assume that everyone has written down my Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I was really pleased to see Michael J. Sullivan's Death of Dulgath on there. That's a book that we published, by the way.
Oh, amazing. He's got a new campaign live right now, actually. Let me see if I can find it.
I remember at the time, I think that book raised $90,000, which was like the second or third highest fiction raise on Kickstarter.
Well, he has broken it with this one. This project is called Nolan, and he's already at 145,000 with 6 more days to go on his campaign.
Yeah,
this
and it goes back.
Campaign.
Yeah, it goes back to what you said earlier about engaging your fan base, right? And so, as a publisher, and obviously, I care about content deeply. I also care about marketing, and so you said something about know your target market. And can you talk a little bit about why it's so important? I know why it's important on in terms of publishing to know your readers, potential readers, but can you talk a little bit about crowdfunding and why it's so important that you know your target market and how that informs the tactics that you employ to reach them?
Sure. I think this is probably a bit of, kind of basic marketing, that it's quality over quantity. A lot of creators will come to us and say, I got an email from this company who promised to get my project in front of 10,000 people if I just, pay them however many dollars for their newsletter. Well, usually those are newsletters that go out to people who want to support gadgets. There's like a whole world of like smart watches and like weird bicycle helmets on Kickstarter. And so, sure, you could pay somebody to get your delightful fantasy novel in front of 10,000 people who want gadgets, and none of them will care. So that's a bad use of your money and your resources and your time. Knowing who is actually interested in the work you're doing by, doing the work to build an audience, by understanding your community, that's always going to lead to more success once you start telling the people who are actually going to care about the thing that you're doing.
It's so funny. You sound like me talking to authors. Just figure out who's really going to care. And sometimes
it's almost like we're in the same world.
Yeah, we are. It's very odd. So sometimes I'll get an author that will say, "I've got a book project that everyone's going to love," and that's when I just roll my eyes and think to myself, "I haven't said it out loud yet. That means everyone's going to love your project."
Everyone, really?
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's bring this home. Donna's project. In your estimation. Yeah, Dana, please.
Yeah, I have a question relating to your presentation, Oriana, which was really super helpful. In fact, I can't wait for the video because I want to watch it again. So let me ask you this. If the typical campaign is 30 to 60 days, why would you not do the full amount? What would be the rationale?
I'm so glad that you asked me that question, actually. I will not let you do a 60-day campaign, Donna. You can't do it. Here's why. People often think this, well, if I can raise, $10,000 in 30 days, why can't I raise $20,000 in 60 days? Here's how your campaign is going to go. Almost all of your action is going to happen the first week and the last week. The first week, it's new, it's exciting, you're firing on all cylinders, you're telling everyone you know. The last week, it's now or never, do or die, all or nothing. In the middle, you're going to have a plateau. You're going to get tired. Your followers are going to get tired. A lot of the work that goes into planning a successful campaign is figuring out what will you do during that plateau to keep the enthusiasm up, to keep momentum going, to keep people excited. As I said in the presentation, you will be talking about this project every single day while the campaign is live. Can you imagine doing that for 8 weeks? Can you imagine the exhaustion to you, the fatigue from your backers? You will absolutely counteract all of your efforts to keep it going. And it will, the only time we encourage people to run a project longer than like 4 weeks is if you're raise is like massive, if this is, you know, like millions of dollars, or, you know, like a huge a company doing a huge coordinated marketing campaign that like can actually spend that amount of time talking about the project, or possibly if you're straddling a holiday, people who launch campaigns in early to mid-December will say to run it 5 weeks, because you're just going to lose all the air is going to go out of the room in between Christmas and New Year's. So for an individual running a project, you know, you can do whatever you like, but really, sometimes, and we often encourage people actually to even think about running a 3-week campaign, just because it is really hard. It's really hard to like keep the enthusiasm and the momentum going all of that time. But the reason why 4 weeks is pretty good is, especially if you're trying to coordinate press coverage, podcast appearances, you know, things that you're relying on other people's schedules and you can't really predict when that piece will, I mean, the worst, you know, you certainly don't want that New York Times cover story to come out 3 days after your campaign closes. So we have found that 4 weeks is pretty much the sweet spot to like get everything activated without completely just like blowing it from exhaustion.
Right. Well, I'm learning from you, so I appreciate that insight. I will say that I've been speaking about my topic every day for 2 years, and I never get tired of it. But that's not the same as a campaign.
Yeah, it's a little different. I mean, certainly that's how you become a thought leader, is by talking about a topic day after day. But to talk about one specific project, to ask your friends whether they've given you money yet today for 60 days, we just don't find that it continues to be effective.
So if I said we create a project with a certain time frame, you're locked into that time frame. You can't say like 5 days before, oops, we want to extend it by 5 more days.
No, that would sort of undermine the all or nothing model.
Okay.
Um,
I have another question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Can I ask another specific question? How many awards do you think is the ideal number?
So it really depends on what the project is doing, and who your rewards are serving. One thing that rewards are really good for is that you can kind of essentially market them to different demographics, right? There are some people who come to your campaign who just, you know, believe in what you do, and they want to give you $5. And if you want to give them credit on your website or on the acknowledgements page or some sort of like digital thank you card for that, great. Perhaps you know people who have $100 or $1,000 to give. You can target them with specific rewards that will appeal to their interests. So a typical spread, you know, a campaign for an item like a book, your main tier is the book tier, the book, the ebook. I usually like to see 1 or 2 rewards below that level, likely digital rewards, possibly something like a sticker or a bookmark, and then a handful of reward tiers above it, all of which is going to help you get to your goal faster, kind of subsidize the people who can only afford the ebook, that sort of thing. We certainly see, you know, McSweeney's ran a campaign a few years ago, and I think they had 100 reward tiers. You can do it. I love actually a campaign with a ton of rewards, but if you are an author running a campaign by yourself, do not ruin your life by an overly ambitious reward plan, because really that's the worst. If you finish this campaign, you have this pile of money to make the thing you want, but first you have to figure out how to do reward fulfillment for like an overly ambitious number of things. That's really a shame. So
Well, then let me ask, then I have a follow-up question. Suppose you give a gift, like a bookmark. And you're having the bookmark made, right? You're going to a manufacturer and you're saying make X number of bookmarks. In fact, how do you know unless you know how many are purchasing on your Kickstarter? I mean, you want to know beforehand whether you're going to buy 25 bookmarks or you're going to buy 2,500 bookmarks.
Yeah, you have to know your audience, and you have to have, be able to make a reasonable estimate of what you're actually going to need. I mean, a lot of these things, if you get 100 too many bookmarks, you can bring them with you to the next writing conference you go to. You can hand them out to friends. You can, but yeah, I mean, that's why producing something like bookmarks, you can be okay if you've got too many. If you try to go down the route of like t-shirts, that people think, oh, t-shirts, it's easy, but it's really not, for exactly this reason. You don't know, like, people have different sizes. So not only are you don't know how many you're going to make, how many of each size, how many of each color, all of a sudden you have this like incredibly complicated fulfillment plan that you can't even do a good job of estimating before you start. So keep yourself to things like bookmarks and like easy stuff that you can produce and fulfill with relative ease, and deal with the excess if that turns out to be what happens at the end of the campaign.
Well, just to clarify, does that mean that you have to have all of the gifts in hand, or do you order them after the end of your campaign?
Yeah, you don't have to do anything. I mean, we certainly recommend that you at the very least get estimates and like understand fully what your costs will be. But no, there's no requirement. Just that, you know, if you make a bunch of promises to your backers about what they're going to get, make sure that you know how to get that to them eventually.
Oriana, can you give us an example of 2 higher tier rewards that are most common in the world of publishing above and beyond the book by itself?
Most common, I mean, you know, part of the fun of this is that you can do things that are extremely like totally unique and like related to your project. Things we see a lot, high-end prints of the cover, naming a character after an audience member or somebody else, depending on, we see a lot of partner rewards in publishing. If you've got 5 friends who have similar books to you, maybe you could do a book bundle with people. There's um, click, click. Off the top of my head, those are sort of like some of the common ones.
Okay.
If you go to our publishing creators page, we've got our most popular Kickstarter article ever is like 96 reward ideas that you haven't thought of. And then in last April, we did an update of that. That's like 70 rewards you can make and fulfill in quarantine. So you could check both of those out. Those have a ton of more ideas.
And as applicable to Donna's project, I would think something related to the content of her book.
Totally. I feel like, you know,
Yeah.
MP3s of speeches, like a playlist of hearing the speeches delivered out loud, a CD, something like that could be quite lovely. Maybe like if some of the speechwriters are still alive, there could be like an event, maybe a virtual event where people deliver their speeches. Yeah, I think definitely something of that. Making sure that it relates back to the project is always key to really compelling rewards.
Oriana, without giving away anything top secret, what do you see ahead for Kickstarter? What do you think the big changes we're going to see in the future?
Well, certainly we're in such a weird time because the impacts of COVID continue to be kind of difficult to predict. I think that, you know, it's hard to talk about positives after a year like 2020. Obviously, there are a tremendous number of people suffering, and things are really bad all over the place. But in a lot of creative businesses, there really has been a bump. You know, everybody's at home now, so people are reading more, they're writing more, they're publishing more. They're also folks who have stabilized to whatever degree they can. Folks have a lot of disposable income that they used to spend on concerts and museums and, you know, things like that, which they're really excited to put into people's Patreons, to fund people's Kickstarters, to spend on, you know, to support culture in any way they can. So I hope that once things rebound to the degree that they're going to, that people keep some of that, you know, that it was really meaningful to have been able to support creative projects in a new way during this time, and that some of that will carry forward. Certainly, we have no idea, you know, how long until things get back to normal, whatever that even looks like, and how many of the habits that we have developed by necessity in this strange time will continue on into the future. But beyond that, you know, Kickstarter specific trends, I think that it's been a long, my boss who held this role for 7 years, one of the sort of like the themes of the work that she did was trying to shift perspective within the publishing industry about self-funding and self-publishing. Publishing is an industry that is pretty elitist, and it's pretty enamored of its gatekeepers. And so helping people to understand that there's no shame in doing you know, publishing the work that you want, the way that you want to do it, with the tools that you have at your disposal. I think I think that she was really successful with that, and I think that that will continue. I think there will be more and more people respecting the idea of DIYing your way to being a published author. So that's certainly something that I'm working on, helping to kind of carry that forward. And, you know, we're also seeing a lot of publishers, particularly small presses, coming to Kickstarter. It's just like a more effective business model to get the money up front than to take a chance on an ambitious project. So, you know, here's hoping that all of those trends carry forward and that we keep seeing more and more exciting and innovative book projects all the time.
Oriana, can you talk about the strategy behind stretch or reach goals?
Yeah, for sure. Stretch goals is essentially a messaging tactic. If you set a goal and you reach it, well, now what? How do you keep getting people to pledge to the campaign and to keep backing what you're doing? Campaigns like book campaigns don't tend to have that much of a problem about it, because if someone wants the book, they'll back it for the book, regardless of like, oh, they've already hit their goal, they don't need my money. But stretch goals it's a mechanism to keep people coming back. So there are a few ways to use stretch goals strategically. One way is to use it to encourage your current backers to help you spread the word and promote. So a lot of times people will say, if we raise another $5,000, we'll do a full color insert or a slipcase or some sort of like embellishment to the book itself, or an additional item. Prints or cards or, you know, things that sort of like go along with the project. And then all of the backers say, wow, I want that thing. So it's worth it to me to get 5 friends to support this project so that I can get this thing that they're offering. It can also just be an excuse to do something more with the project that you wanted to do. In the comics category, one of the pioneers of Kickstarter comics, Spike Trotman, she was one of the first people on the platform. And she pioneered this idea of her stretch goals are all tied to increases in page rates for all of her contributors. You know, so for every $5,000, all of the letterer and the colorist and the, you know, everybody gets a couple 5 cents more per page or something like that. So you can use it to reward your contributors. But in whatever you do with your stretch goals, the basic idea of it is you add it to the campaign page, you send a backer update, you use it as an excuse to do a whole new social push, maybe you re-email people. You know, it's a reason to re-engage with your backers, likely during that plateau time when you've kind of run out of your original anecdotes and ideas for how to promote the campaign.
Excellent, thank you. So I've got a question here from the audience. First is, can you comment on the genres that are that you're seeing more often, or if there's an even breakdown that you can share?
Yeah, sure. We don't, so our subcategories are more by type, not by genre. I mean, we do have like a fiction versus nonfiction, but the subcategories are more like letterpress, literary spaces. The most popular subcategory for the entire life of Kickstarter has been anthologies. The reason for that is probably obvious, that if you've got 10 contributors to a book, that's 10 people promoting to their audiences. That's likely 10 times the number of backers or something along those lines. Beyond that, you know, there's a huge fantasy, sci-fi fantasy contingent. There's a good number of romance. There's a lot of memoirs. But it's much more, you know, and those make sense, right? They're the genres that have really rabid fan bases. You know, it's easier to access a broad community of people who like to read fantasy than, you know, people who like to read about, I don't know, an academic treatise on grammar. Why is that what I thought of? But, you know, whatever you're writing and whoever you are, it's a question of, you know, do you know how to reach that audience? Not, are there other people doing this on Kickstarter already? If you know how to find your crowd, then that's all you need.
I noticed Donna smiling when you said anthology.
Yeah, but a lot of the people in my book are dead.
Yeah.
No, the women speakers.
Maybe
they have their own fan base. They have their fan bases, some of them.
Totally. And maybe their estates will tweet for you.
Maybe what?
Their estates will tweet for you.
Maybe so. That's a
or
good
there's
idea.
Probably societies and organizations
Totally.
that are you know, devoted to some of these women, which I'm sure is the case. And then one last question is, what is the average funding amount for a publishing project, if there is such a thing?
Yeah, there's really not. I mean, you know, publishing is very broad. We have people who come and are ecstatic to raise $500 to produce a little zine. And we have Brandon Sanderson wander over to the platform and raise $6 million. So it's a pretty wide range. I would say, you know, most individual authors for book projects are probably raising between like 5 and maybe 20,000, something like that. But again, it's we can and are surprised all the time by, you know, people hopping in with something that seems so, you know, niche and strange and unusual, and just bringing this massive community to bear and funding tremendously. So
So
yeah,
Brendan Sanderson, he raised $6 million. What was he asking for?
that's a great question. It was let me see if I can pull
But
it.
there's a limit, right, to how much you can ask for.
There's a limit to how much you can ask. I guess there is, but there's not a limit to how much you can make. I mean, if people keep backing, you can keep
Right,
going.
but you can't go on Kickstarter and ask for $6 million.
Sure, you could. I wouldn't suggest it, but you can ask for whatever you want. He asked for his goal was 250,000 and he raised 6.7 million. And to, you know, this was a 10-year anniversary leather bound edition of like one of the massively popular authors' most popular series. So, you know, I would not come to Kickstarter planning to raise $6 million, but you know, who
I
knows who's
must
watching this
have
webinar? Maybe you can.
I think I misunderstood. I thought you said at the beginning that there was a limit to how much you could ask for. You were probably
There's
referring to something else.
Yeah, there's a limit to rewards. You can't have a reward tier that's higher than $10,000. But I don't think, as far as I know, I mean, if you want to ask for the sky, go ahead and ask for it. But you know, you probably won't raise it. So what's the point?
Fantastic. So one last question from me, and I know this was in your presentation, but could you direct people that are interested in more resources, specifically as related to publishing, exactly where on your website they should go?
Yeah, totally. Kickstarter.com/publishing is our publishing section page. It's mostly projects. I also curate that. So I, you know, filter in some articles. We've got our, last year we crossed our $200 million pledged milestone. So we made a beautiful listicle of 118 projects showing what's possible on Kickstarter publishing. You can find that there. And then Kickstarter.com/creators/publishing is where you'll find my publishing creator tips page, which is all sorts of videos and links and articles and interviews on kind of like all stages of the an independent publishing and crowdfunding journey. And if you don't find what you're looking for there, find me at Oriana BKLYN. You can slide into my DMs anytime, and I will be happy to see how I can help you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Dana, the viewers are going to want to know when this campaign is going to go live. What can we tell them?
I wish I knew. If I'm shooting the video next month, early March, then I would say early April, mid-April.
Okay, so everyone be on the lookout for Speaking While Female, a wonderful anthology that is coming out in, we'll call it the spring.
Okay, well, okay. I'm optimistic.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you, Dana. Thank you, Oriana. This is wonderful. Great information here. And we'll sign off now. And thank you all again.
Yeah, Naren, thank you so much for having me, and everybody on into the future. Thank you for watching. I can't wait to see what you create.
Thank you, Oriana. That was great.
All right. Bye, everyone.